I'd like to call the meeting to order at 5:09 p.m. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F. This meeting is being videotaped. This is the Tuesday, December 3rd, Planning Board meeting. Due to litigation, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81BB, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation known as Gregory Nichols et al. Versus Planning Board of the Town of Westport. Because I declare that discussing this matter
The statutory citation should be Chapter 30A, Section 21A3.
What was that?
The statutory citation to go into executive session would be Chapter 30A, Section 21A3. Yep.
Okay.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Dayler, aye.
Schmid, aye.
Whiten, aye. So we are back from executive session. We are in open session. And just to reiterate, under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, this meeting is being videotaped. Are we going out live?
Yes.
Yeah, we're going out live. So, next up is, let's see, what time is it? Administrative items, do we have anything?
6:08.
We do not have any administrative items today.
Okay, we have to wait for 6:15 for the public hearing. So, you want to start the planners report?
This is a quick update on the coastal zone management grant that we have received as well as, sorry about that, I just needed to move this microphone. As well as the municipal vulnerability preparedness grant, which are both for developing beach management plans. I posted the RFP on November 30th, and we will expect responses by December 18th. Wanted it to be do a little bit earlier, but just due to the holidays, we had a number of respondents reach out saying it's probably not going to be enough time, so I extended it. And yeah, hopefully we get some good responses. I've been in contact with a couple of different firms, so that's good sign.
So this is the large grant for beach management?
Yeah, it's
On Atlantic Avenue, Beach Avenue, and East Beach?
correct, and it's $230,000 between two grants.
Super. So we'll know by the middle of December?
I would like to get it contracted as soon as we possibly can because it has a very quick turnaround. The turnaround has to be completed by June 30th of this year. So that's fast.
So do we have the ability to award it, or does it have to go to the select board?
We have the ability to award it.
Okay, so hopefully we'll have it by our meeting on the 17th? Good.
Well, no, because it closes on the 18th, so it would be our meeting in January. I'm an authorized signatory, so I can sign off on it. But we'll see what if we only get one response, if we get a whole bunch of responses, maybe that's a discussion we could have. If we only get one response, then I think that's the one that we're going to end up going with, provided it meets the criteria we put in the RFP.
Okay.
So we'll see. And an update on our municipal vulnerability preparedness 2.0 grant. We held a community event at the library a couple of weeks ago on the 30th, and we started collecting data for the pilot project. There'll be a couple of different options for pilot projects that we'll have the town vote on, and we will post these different, we haven't posted a survey yet, but the survey is forthcoming. Those three projects are, and not gonna go into too much detail, but first one is to use the pilot project grant funds to improve the town's social media presence, as well as come up with some public education materials on climate-related concerns. So, increased incidence of Lyme disease, who to contact for emergency and post-disaster services, things like that. The second one is emergency preparedness kits. So, for folks who are in need of those kinds of materials, candles, flashlights, those kinds of things. That could be something that could be distributed. And lastly is we're looking at doing some tree services in town. That would encompass mapping hazard trees that are within the road right of way. And then depending on, we'll probably have to reasonably target a particular area of town. We were looking at Northwestport to do this in. If there's money left over, or ideally if we could get in-kind services, so donated labor to map the trees with an arborist, and then under the assumption that we would give them the contract for the grant funds to then take down the trees, that would be great. But anyway, if there's money left over, then I think we'll take down some trees that are dead or dying within the right of way that during a storm event could come down.
Okay, so we're still waiting for people to vote on this.
We haven't even pulled the survey together yet, so
Okay.
that'll be something that'll be posted to the town's website. And for people who have left their emails throughout the entire MVP 2.0 process, we'll send the link out to that survey directly to them.
Okay.
I have an update on the Hicks Bridge landing redesign. I don't know if you want to wait for this since we only have 2 minutes. There may be more
That's a long thing.
discussion.
Okay. We could do quickly minutes of October 29th.
Mr. Chair, I've read the minutes of October 29th. Again, I think the new format, we can still call it new, is really good. And I find them accurate and complete, and I would move acceptance of the minutes of October 29th, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay. It is 6:16, so we can open the public hearing. So this is for 203 Mouse Mill Road, file number 24-026 SPA-MAG, continued from September 24th of this year.
Good evening. Matt Pike with South Coast Engineering on behalf of the applicants. Here before the board with a site plan for proposed storage building located at 203 Mouse Mill Road. 203 Mouse Mill Road is located on the west side of Mouse Mill Road, just south of American Legion Highway. The property is owned by William Wright and Elaine Farias, and who are also the owners of AMA Engineering, which is the property next door at 683 American Legion Highway. So the purpose of this plan is to show the construction of the 7,200 square foot storage building, a stormwater system, fire access way, and associated grading. So the stormwater system will receive, treat, recharge stormwater as required. It's designed in accordance with Massachusetts stormwater standards and the Westport Stormwater Quality and Quantity Control Regulation. Both volume and rate discharge are reduced for all the storm events. The proposal meets zoning requirements as related to building height, lot coverage, and yard setbacks. It does not meet the zoning bylaw related to required number of parking spaces. The proposed building will only be used for storage and will not create any additional parking demands. And the applicant will go before the ZBA for that variance. There's one waiver regarding the requirement for perimeter buffer that's requested. In lieu of perimeter buffer, we're proposing hedges planted, deer-resistant hedges planted along the front and side of the proposed building in order to provide a visual buffer. In addition, the building is approximately 300 feet back from the roadway. That's essentially it, and I'll turn it over to the board.
Okay, Michael?
I concur with what the applicant's consultant has said, is that the plan now is meeting the town's zoning bylaw standards as well as the site plan rules and regulations. They are requesting one waiver, which I think the board in previous meetings seemed inclined to grant that. And the consulting engineer has signed off on the stormwater design. There are a couple of comments from the consulting engineer, and I'll read those off. The site plan needs to extend the proposed erosion control barrier around the outlet for infiltration system 2. The town or the town's consultant shall inspect the excavation for infiltration chamber system 2 at the time of construction to confirm the design groundwater elevation and soils texture. Since no test pits were performed in that particular location, the system was designed to assume soils and groundwater similar to the test pits performed at System 1, where the consulting engineer and town staff were present for those test pits. The 20-foot wide reinforced turf driveway to the proposed driveway shall be solely for the use of 203 Mouse Mill Road and fire department access, not for commercial access to the proposed storage building. That is a recommended condition of approval in my staff report. And the one last outstanding item that I will note, that the fire department has also signed off on this design. If you recall, the driveway was not wide enough. They've signed off on the use of the pervious paver materials, as well as the width and design of their driveway.
So do we have any further comments from Conservation or Board of Health or
No.
Building?
No further conservation from any of those departments. I did pull this comment over from my staff report from the last the last meeting, just noting that the tree species that they have proposed, I ran it by him and he confirms that it is a deer tolerant species.
And just for
It's green giant arborvitae.
green giant,
Arborvitae. It's a deer resistant variant of arborvitae.
really?
That's
Ain't no such thing. But
Well,
I have it, the deer love it.
I thought that rhododendron was deer resistant, but no.
supposedly he agreed that this particular variant of arborvitae is deer resistant. So
I have
just
three,
reporting what.
I have 3 of the green giant, and the deer love it, love them, all 3 of them.
Sure.
Depends on the individual deer. And what do you dress it with?
And the landscaper said these are deer resistant. Depends how hungry the deer are,
Right.
how much they resist. They can't run as fast as the deer, that's the problem.
So any questions for the applicant? Okay, it seems there's a few people here, I assume, for this. Anybody have a question, comment?
Yeah. Nice seeing you. Yeah, you too. For the record, Steve Gioso with SciTech Engineering. I've been asked to look at the project on behalf of Al and Deborah Medeiros. They're direct abutters to this site. I do have a fairly brief outline of some of the issues that we picked up on that we thought we would like to put to the board's attention, and if I can get this to you and have this entered into the record. I've got one for everybody over there.
thank you.
And I won't read through each item individually, but I'll go through each general category and explain why we at least think there should be some further evaluation of the site to make sure we're in compliance with all the regulations, and also we have a design on the drainage, which is really my client's primary concern going forward. So we know the original plan didn't have test pits, and they have done a couple of test pits in the vicinity of this proposed leaching area. There were none done over here. And we took an opportunity to look at the soil logs that they presented. They are on the plan. And the soils indicate a nice well-drained material, nice sandy material, so ideal for recharge and the use of a recharge system. So we think that's a good use of the area, and for mitigation purposes, it avoids building a large detention basin. So I think from that standpoint, that's a good idea. The issues we have are, there are conflicting pieces of information regarding soils. The USDA mapping indicates that this is a Paxton classification soil, and it's important from the standpoint of doing the drainage analysis. From the drainage standpoint, Paxton soils tend to be a little more silty, so water does not percolate as well through Paxton soils, so you tend to generate more runoff than you would through sandy material. It kind of stands to reason. The fine particles clog the pores. So you have immediately a conflict between the on-site actual field testing of soils and the USDA soil mapping. And so now that goes into how do you analyze the drainage system, because picking the right runoff curve numbers and how you analyze the drainage is really tied to the land use, whether it's a wooded area, grassed area, impervious surfaces, and what type of soils, because that's either going to promote more recharge and less runoff, or less recharge and more runoff. So when they ran their design, they ran the design based on the USDA soil mapping, which is what normally we would do, except when we have on-site data that contradicts that information. So in this case, you've got on-site data that seems to indicate a hydrologic soil group of A, which is going to generate a lot less runoff and a lot more natural recharge, as opposed to a hydrologic soil group C. So if I were looking at this site, I would look at this and say, okay, we've got A-type soils. And in fact, the designer used the A-type soils in selecting the rate that water will penetrate the ground in sizing the recharge systems. They use what's called the Rawls rate, and you look at the drainage calculations. They use a Rawls rate a little over 8 inches per hour, which I would use too for an A soil, the sandy soil, because it's going to allow a lot of water to go into the ground in a short period of time. However, when you look at the master drainage plan that they use to generate the flow of water to these systems, the volume of water, they're using a hydrologic soil group C. And the reason that's important is that when you're looking at changing the characteristics of the land, in this case, putting a 7,200 square foot building, concrete apron that's going to connect the two facilities together, you're rendering a lot of ground impervious versus having good recharge with the sandy soils that appear to be the case on this site. So when they do their analysis should be for both existing and proposed conditions, looking at the sandier soil conditions, if in fact that is the prevalent soils on the site. Now, they did 2 test pits, they're really close together, but they are relying on that to design their recharge system. So I think you can't have it both ways. You have to look at the soils as you see them on site, or you use the general database that's available, the USDA database, and that's a very acceptable methodology, but you can't have it both ways. So if you use the USDA numbers, then these recharge systems become quite a bit larger. Going back to the soils and the test pits, since it is a sandy material, what you'll find when you're doing test pits in sand, you don't get good indicators of modeling in the soil, and the modeling is used today to determine seasonal high groundwater. So they did the test pits, they went down 84 to 88 inches and didn't observe any water, which we would expect. We're in a very low water table period right now. I don't think we're in a drought condition, but at least I don't know when the test pits were done. But it is a low water table, and they didn't observe any indicators of modeling in the soil. With sandy soils and lack of evidence of water, what you typically would do is what they call a Frimpter method to determine seasonal high groundwater during these off-peak periods when the water table is naturally down. And what the Frimpter method does is it looks at index wells, wells that have been monitored for years, and they have historical database for those wells. And there's a formula you apply based on what you observe and what the Frimpter wells, the water level is, and that allows you to get an adjusted groundwater elevation. Now, that's important because you've got 2 recharge systems close to the abutting properties here and here. And if the water table comes up, and in particular this system here, which is not showing any mounding of the ground surface at all, if that system has to be elevated to get groundwater separation, and again, typically Westport and in this area, you're typically looking at an 18-inch to maybe a 4-foot water table. I think that's fairly standard. It kind of is indicated by the fact that their septic system here appears to be a mounded septic system. So by the topography, that's not natural going around that. That was not placed in natural ground. That was elevated. And it's only elevated if it's a water table consideration. So I'm going to assume that you're likely to see water table above 84 inches here, and it could be significantly above that. It could be as much as 4 or 5 feet higher than that. And if that's the case, then this plan doesn't work, and you may end up with a significant amount of grading that needs to be developed in this area to have the system meet the standards of being above the water table in a condition of this type. And if that's the case, then that grading comes awfully close to the boundary line, then you're worried about breakout from the sides of the system. And I know, listening to the report from the peer reviewer, they said, well, when you go to build these systems, we want to go out there and observe the installation and make sure the water table's not an issue. Well, at that point, it'd be too late. The building would probably be up. Now you're going to have to retrofit something around a design that probably could be addressing that issue immediately with proper evaluation of groundwater conditions. So I think at a minimum, getting an accurate read on the water table is going to help with understanding whether this system will work long-term in this area. A couple of other items. I'm assuming that, I mean, obviously they did subcatchment plans for the drainage, which is, again, used to evaluate where does water go when it rains and where does the runoff want to be directed so they can design their mitigation measures. For some reason, the subcatchment plans don't utilize this topography. They use a more generic topography. It's really better to get a more accurate read on flow paths and limits of watersheds to use the real topography, because they've got enough data here. They've obviously done a lot of survey. That data should be utilized to do their evaluation of where does water go and how much water gets directed to each element of their drainage system. So at a minimum, we think that that should be looked at, and that might fine-tune their watersheds a little bit. Next item for the access, going with a turf system for the access road, basically a reinforced grid type product. It's like a plastic grid, like egg crate. You fill it with dirt, you grow grass in it, it looks nice. I think it's a good way of avoiding paving a big swath of land. The problem is, in their drainage analysis, they're assuming that that's basically creating a better condition than a gravel road or a paved surface. And I think that there'll be a marginal improvement over a gravel road or a paved surface, but not to the extent that they've taken credit for. I went to the manufacturer's website for the NDS Turf Track material. It's really lacking in information on how much benefit you get by going to this system in terms of reducing runoff. But I think in this case, because they're going to have heavy vehicles running on this, they have, rightly so, designed this system to sit on top of a compacted gravel base. So you're building this on top, and aesthetically that's going to help, and you are going to get some recharge associated with the turf surface, but it hits immediately an impervious barrier just below the surface. So during day-to-day storms, it probably works really effective in mitigating runoff. I think when you get a larger storm, the 10, the 25, you're dealing with inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period, you're going to overwhelm that egg crate grid, and that water is going to translate into runoff. And I think in that case, they've misread the amount of runoff mitigation this particular system will provide. I think it's, again, something that should be looked at closer, and some backup data provided as to why they believe putting this in actually gets you better recharge than the natural soil conditions on the site. The piping on the site, there's a number of drain lines here, routing around the building. There are no elevations shown on any of the piping, no elevations on any of the recharge systems. We think a contractor couldn't build this particular drainage system without basically making field judgments as to how to build the location and elevation of these systems. So we think that at a minimum there should be additional detail on the drainage system provided. These two sets of pipes aren't even identified in terms of the pipe size. None of the pipes have slopes evaluated for them. So all of those things affect how the water is going to travel. Are they going to be able to capture the amount of water that they're talking about capturing? Is it going to flow the way it's supposed to flow? Without that detailed information, the contractor can't build the site, to a set of specifications, and there's really no way of evaluating the drainage that it's going to effectively mitigate for the impacts. I don't know if there's any building plans that have been submitted on this. I haven't seen any. I'm assuming this is a metal frame building, a metal building. And if it's a metal building with a metal roof, then there's an issue with the recharge system the way it's designed. With a metal roof, or in any recharge system, they're going to have to file a registration under the Underground Injection Control Program that the state of Massachusetts has to document that they are in fact creating these recharge systems on the site. And it's a program that helps identify where these systems are set, how they're built, and if there's a need for pre-treatment of the runoff going into these systems. If in fact this is a metal roof, it's a mandatory requirement that you have water quality pre-treatment for this system. And obviously the way this is currently designed, there is no pre-treatment specified. And DEP specifies very specific types of pre-treatment that can qualify for a metal roof. So I think at a minimum we should know, is this a metal roof? If it is, there does need to be pre-treatment. Otherwise, the concern of DEP is that you may have metals leaching off the roof. Going into the ground, we have a neighborhood that relies on water from wells in this area, and that's a potential water quality issue for those adjacent well systems. So they require that treatment if it's a building with a metal roof in an industrial type setting, which is, this setting is clearly an industrial type setting, or if you're in a designated aquifer zone. And what DEP is trying to do is not penalize people with a residential property and telling them that they need to do a treatment system that could be very expensive because they're dealing with a much smaller roof area and a much smaller impact or potential impact on the groundwater. So we think that that is something else that should be identified for the project before it goes forward. Operation and maintenance plan for the site for the long-term maintenance of the drainage system. There really was no identification of how you maintain this turf driveway. It is going to get some wear and tear depending on how much traffic it gets. How often is it inspected? What needs to happen to refurbish it, if you will, long-term? I think that should be part of any operation and maintenance plan that's approved for the project. The catch basin, there is one catch basin shown. There is a detail for the trench drain. There's no detail for the catch basin, so what's the size of the structure, the grade, how much of a sediment sump does it have? All of those things factor into, is that going to provide some adequate pre-treatment before the water enters the recharge system? I think there's something, at least in the drainage report, that I wasn't picking up on. They indicated they're only adding a 2,800 square feet of additional impervious area, yet we have a 7,200 square foot building and a 600 square foot concrete pad. And that may be that they're taking credit for the recharge, but that doesn't eliminate the impervious surface. So I think it's a little misleading on how that's worded in the report, and that should be probably clarified. And I think it also doesn't take into account the compacted gravel through here if in fact the manufacturer does not verify that you're going to get 100% recharge for the storm events involved. I think finally, just a point, the abutters, the Medeiros have recently experienced drainage overflow from the 683 American Legion Highway property, which is the sister property of this particular site. There's been overflows from the drainage system to their property, which they did not experience after the initial construction, and really didn't experience probably for the last 10, 12 years or so. However, they have been experiencing more overflows going from that site onto theirs. We questioned and reached out to the owner of 683 American Legion Highway, who's the owner of, I guess, both projects here. and asked what type of maintenance has occurred on the site. The response was lacking in detail. But when you're relying on a subsurface drainage system, the maintenance is key to the system working correctly. So we would ask that whatever has happened on that site, there'd be better documentation, verification of what type of maintenance. Have they cleaned the catch basins, swept the parking lot surfaces occasionally, looked for settlements in the drainage swales that border my client's property, and just the overall general maintenance, so that if this next project goes forward, everybody's going to have a comfort level that the systems are being maintained correctly, and we're not going to be facing headaches down the line. So those are just the points we want to bring out. We think that there's enough elements here that they should at least be evaluated and allow the applicant to be able to address and respond to. As a designer, I think you can always address problems. But I do think that there's a number of items here that should be looked at in a little more detail.
Thank you.
Be happy to answer any questions or sit down and be quiet.
So I guess this question would be for the applicant, not for you, but it shows on one of the lots a large SAS. Do we have any soil reports from that when it was installed, or is that?
Correct, and
is
that was the soil information that we were initially relying on when we designed the stormwater for this lot. But from the direction of the planning board, we went and did additional test pits at the exact location of the infiltration, and that's what the information we're using now. So we have information for what's at the neighboring SAS and at this location. At the neighboring SAS, the water was about 40 inches, and that's what the original design was based on. When we did the test pits here, we found that the water was deeper. And can I get into any, do you want me to
the
respond to any?
How about the soils?
The soils were different as well.
Were what?
Were different from what was found at the neighboring lot. And that's what I'm getting into about the modeling of the site itself was modeled using the USGS soil types, like Mr. Giosa had said, using C soil types. The infiltration, I believe that this was just really an isolated area, that there's some sand there, and that's why the higher rate of 8.27 was used. We're not relying on the infiltration to drive this this design. It can easily get put back to the 1.25 of a sea soil, and it still works.
So the information from the existing SA, is it existing or proposed?
This is an existing SAS next to it, 683.
No, right there.
This is
Oh, higher.
proposed, yeah. Well, this is existing, yeah. Oh, I do not have information on
You
that.
don't?
No.
Okay.
Pardon me, I thought you were talking about next door.
Okay, I guess you can address some of the issues you.
Sure. And go down the list here. So, like I was saying, this site was modeled using all of the contours shown here. And if you look at if you look at what's shown in the stormwater report, it was just reduced just to show every 5-foot contour. So this is what was actually used to model the site, was the topography pre and proposed in its entirety. We did use what was shown in the USGS soil maps, mainly sea soils, and only the infiltration was shown at the higher rate of infiltration because, like I said, I believe this was an isolated area. I don't think this whole site has sand. In the next revision, I can easily put that infiltration rate down. It's not what's driving the project. It worked the first time we submitted it. It works now. So, like I said, so all the subcatchment plans were using this topography here. The driveway here is not a compacted gravel that the detail shows that it's a 1.5-inch stone that has, I think, approximately 15% amended soil mixed in with it. So in reality, you have the amended soil underneath it. You have crushed stone, which is actually going to provide more infiltration, more storage that we haven't taken credit for with the design here because it already worked. There's no need to show that you're getting additional storage with this driveway.
So when you say crushed stone, you mean stone dust?
No, it's 1.5 inch crushed stone. So there's a detail sheet
Okay.
that goes along with this that shows. So it's not a compacted gravel that has fines and et cetera, that'll compact into a hard base. It'll compact into something that you can drive on it, but it's 1.5 inch crushed stone. I think if you zoom into. So like I said, that will provide additional storage that is not taken credit for in the design. All the inverts and the pipe slopes and the pipe types are all in the detail sheet. I could easily add reseeding, turf as needed to the long-term maintenance plan. So the CB, I think, is also called out. It's just a 12 by 12 NDS plastic, or it's either 12 by 12 or 24 by 24. It should be called out on the plan. And it's just a standard, just on the plan, there's a note there. And it doesn't provide much of a sump, and it doesn't provide pre-treatment. It's not required to provide that. It's just taken in lawn area. The added impervious, what I'm showing there is just the added. I do write in the report about the added impervious because there's a lot of outbuildings that are on this site. You can see the existing conditions that are being removed. But on top of that, we're adding, 2,600 or so square feet, or even if you say it's 7,200 square feet for the building, we're providing over almost 5,000 cubic feet of storage the 10-year storm, which is huge compared to what the amount of impervious that's being added. And that's pretty, and so I wasn't aware of if the roof is metal or if DEP has a pre-treatment regulation or a registration. It didn't seem like the peer reviewer was either, if it is something, but if that is a requirement of the DEP, we'll absolutely look it up. And if it is a metal roof and they do have a pre-treatment requirement, then we would accept that that's a condition of approval to pre-treat it.
So, do you have any comment on the maintenance of the system just off-site this way?
Well, Mr. Wright, he should have, just like is provided in this stormwater report, there's a operation and maintenance plan with checklists and dates that he should have those sheets, and I should be able to get them and provide them to the board.
Well, I guess the question is, has he been following that? So,
He should have. I don't follow up with them years after they've, but it's in the report. He's got it. He signed off that he was going to follow it as part of the approval process. So.
okay, thank you. Yes, sir?
Jim Marsh. I also was asked to come and speak on behalf of the town and Deb and Zeros. I can just elaborate on the...
Mr. Marsh, could you state your address for the minutes?
Sure, 128 Union Street, Suite 203, New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Thank you.
I did reach out to the owner of 683 and specifically requested copies of all maintenance records, logs. The response I got was very cursory. It was very, yes, we've mowed the lawn, or I have a guy who mows the lawn or mows the grass in that area and does that consistently. That was the extent of the maintenance. Records that were provided to me on my request. We've been trying to work to get response from the owner of 683 to address the issues of the overflows that are coming out of the swale on across 40 and onto 48. Just to speak further on what Steve was saying, there's a condition within the 2013-2012 site plan approval. And that condition requires that there's no off-site impacts from this system. We don't think there's compliance right now with that site plan approval. An opportunity here where this is really what we see as an extension of what's already here, of that project. That this needs to get cleaned up and put back into compliance as either a condition of this project or just done separately, but before this system goes in. Otherwise, and I know my client has had the opportunity to speak with the town planner, provided essentially the evidence that shows the overflow during these different storms that have been taking place over the past year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can you ask him what company he's with?
Yeah, please.
Losses of James Marsh.
James Marsh. Offices of James Marsh. Yes, sir.
Just briefly, can we go to the detail sheet, just for a second? And this is the turf track detail here. And what I was pointing to about a compacted base is if you read the bottom of the diagram, and it says an 8-inch thick minimum, well blended and compacted mixture of 85% crushed stone, composted amended soil, atop a compacted subgrade with an asterisk which goes over here and says, okay, you remove materials below this system and you replace it with materials ordinary burrow compacted in 6-inch lifts. So if you're compacting material below that system, you are creating more of an impervious barrier. And yes, you get the crushed stone creating some level of recharge capability, but when you look at the grading plan, you've got a pretty steep driveway there. So you've got this almost a river being formed below the surface through the crushed stone, which is going to follow the pathway of the driveway. It's not like we're putting this on, like that diagram looks like, a flat surface. You're really coming down the hill at a pretty good clip, and that water is going to travel in that lens because you've got this impervious barrier below it, and it's going to blow out into the adjacent roadway. So I think that that's something that just needs to be looked at a little closer. I think they're taking a little too much credit from a drainage mitigation standpoint with that. And there is, in fact, a proposal to put an impervious or a compacted base below this driveway. The other items were, and I forgot to mention this, I didn't see any lighting, proposed lighting on the plan. I don't know if there is going to be lighting either on the building or on the access drive coming in. And I don't believe there was a dumpster pad depicted either. And I know that those tend to be two items that have a direct impact on abutting properties. Spillover lighting is always a concern of the abutters. And the nuisance of noise, smells associated with a dumpster pad. I don't know if one is being proposed, whether they're going to utilize the solid waste facilities next door. But I think those are two items that we would like to at least see some information on to make sure there isn't going to be a nuisance issue associated with those elements of the design.
Good,
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Sure, I got a few questions. Scott Alamo, 216 Mountain Road. Can you make this a little bigger?
Yeah, which one would you?
Like that's the old proposal. Just pop it up, whatever.
In this section there?
Okay, I just
Or
wanted
do you
to
want
see
to
that
go-
one because they've been digging there lately. my wife watching them do whatever, and we didn't know if that had anything to do with the piping. I'm a little hard of hearing, I don't know if you said this. These two test pits, who from the town witnessed those?
John Swartz from the Board of Health.
And he said that, on that description of it, there's 5 feet of sand in that test pit? Is that what it says? If you go down, I'll keep going. Right here. Am I reading that correct? Is this saying that you've got sandy loam for another 24 inches, and then 5 feet of sand? You wouldn't find that on Horse Neck Beach. We all live in Westport. There is no way you're going to find 5 feet of sand anywhere. So that would be my first concern. Because when that runs off, if you make it small again, I actually live over here. I actually live right here. So that drainage water is going to run. My well sits right here, just off the street. So that would be my concern. I'd like to really see what kind of verification you've done on that. That's really sand. My other question would be, this is a standalone building, correct? They don't need the 7, but people are going to work in there. Where is their well going to be? Because they're going to need fire protection, aren't they? And aren't they going to have toilet rooms for someone who, because this building is not connected to that building. So you can't use their facilities. You have to provide, according to the state. Is this septic system big enough for the additional? And where does the pipe from this get to there, or to the other one? And where does that go into the inverts of all of these?
Mr. Chairman, would you like
Sure.
the applicant to respond?
So, Mr. Chairman, first, pardon me, the test pit information there, that was a carryover note from when we were using the inspector of these test pits. The person who witnessed the test pits is the town's consultant, who's also a registered soil evaluator. So there were 2 soil evaluators here at the time, and in the next revision, I'll be sure to include the correct name who witnessed that.
So these are from the
No, it's just
other property?
No, this is the right, it's a template, and John Swartz usually.
So he wasn't there when you actually did those test pits?
No, excuse me, Mr.
Because we
Chairman.
saw him over there.
We were
and
there.
I know I just had my land correct by Lenny Clark. And you know as well as I do that if I just said, oh, listen, I dug a hole in my backyard and it was all sandy. I'm going to build a house here and this is the septic system I'm going to put in. You wouldn't allow me to do that. But you're going to allow a commercial company to say, well, this is kind of the soil that we found over here. But we designed the system for it. I mean, it seems not right.
I don't know what this is. I mean, if these test pits were not for Board of Health reasons, then they don't have to be inspected by the Board of Health.
Correct. That's the only thing that's off on this is the agent on the top. The agent is the town's consultant. All the other information on the test pits are 100% correct. It was just a carryover, scrivener's error, if you want to call it. So the next.
So who witnessed it?
Tracy,
But the carryover is
who's
from
a
a different lot.
PE and a certified soil
Tracy
evaluator.
Duarte from MBO.
Okay.
who's
Isn't
the
it?
consultant
Wouldn't that
engineer.
be from a different lot? And wouldn't you have to have a new perk to put a drainage system in? Isn't it basically the same thing?
It's not a Board of Health regulation. Board of Health has regulations on how to do a perk test for a septic system. This is for
How about the building
this
inspector?
is for drainage or building. It isn't for a septic system. So it isn't regulated by the Board of Health, and therefore the Board of Health agent doesn't go and do that. I think I'm correct.
Correct.
And
It's 2 different lots though. I was gonna say, that's 2 different
So-
lots. That sounds like.
well, but
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
So these two test pits, can you identify where they are on the plan?
They're right here. So these two test pits were performed right at the site of the first system that we had proposed.
Where the drainage will go?
Right, and so there's an actual information that was recorded with the town's consultant and the soil evaluator from the date that's shown on the test pits.
Okay, and so these are on the correct parcel,
They are the correct parcel.
and they are the location where the building infiltration will go?
Correct.
But you're using a sample from a different lot.
No.
Yes, he used the sample from the septic system,
Mr.
that's
Sh-
the lot over.
No, so,
That's what he just said.
it's not the case. These two tests are from where he just pointed out. When he did the original thing, he used the perk information from the other lot, and we asked him to get other information, and he got that from that location on the lot.
That's a gray area. No?
I don't think.
That's like me, where my house is, I own 3 lots. That's like me saying, well, I perked this lot. Well, I'm gonna just use this perk to build a septic system 2 lots over.
No,
it's not.
It's not. So he has done a soil evaluation right where the water from the roof is
I
going
know,
to
but my
go.
point is, you're taking this man's word that he did a soil evaluation
We have our,
and he's not right.
excuse me. We have our own consultant, and one of the employees from the consultant's office was there at the site when they did this evaluation.
Okay.
So it seems everything is according to how it should have gone. So they're not using the information from the other lot to do this anymore. They're using the information that they've gotten from the lot where this is gonna go.
Okay.
So,
How about the toilet room? Where does that tie into what
So,
septic system?
questions come to me,
Yes, I asked.
I
you.
ask them.
Okay. I had asked you about the toilet room.
So, Mr. Chair, there's no indoor plumbing proposed in the storage buildings to be used for storage only, and it doesn't meet the threshold for fire protection either. It's under the amount of square footage that would be required for fire protection.
So there's no requirement from the Board of Health or the state for,
Indoor plumbing
Indoor
or fire
plumbing.
protection, no. The fire protection for the town went over this plan as well and agreed to it.
in the fire department is okay,
Yes.
and the Board of Health is okay.
I don't believe the Board of Health has seen this, but I don't believe it's required to have indoor plumbing for storage areas.
So has Board of Health seen this plan at all?
I haven't submitted it to them, no, so I don't.
Because I
believe that they
think
would.
you're required to do a stormwater management plan with the Board of Health.
Sure, well, following this, I can absolutely submit with them as well.
Anybody else?
Manuel Bagasso, B-A-G-A-C-O, 212 Mouse Mill Road. First thing I want to discuss is, I have a little bit of background in engineering and drafting. I think some of the concerns that Mr. Oliver brought up and a few other people is that this blueprint is not accurate. Okay, there's a lot of misinformation and wrong data on here. I looked at a previous plan. There was no adjustment to the existing building. Measured to the exact same point on Mouse Mill Road from this corner here down here. On this plan, it's 298 feet, 0.3. The other plan was 303 feet, 0.3. Now, the road didn't move, the building didn't move, where did the 5 feet go? So if I can find, I'm not a certified engineer. If I can find that mistake, just on what I know, how many other mistakes are on here? So, when they're gonna propose these plans, I think they need to be 100% accurate. Not, oh, we'll adjust it for next time. Well, it should be, when they're being submitted, they should be 100% accurate. That was one comment. The other one is the existing driveway. My property line runs from about here to about here, 200 feet. The existing driveway that is packed, crushed clamshell, when it rains, it runs down the driveway, across Mouse Mill, and up against my retaining wall. That's there right now. And you're welcome to drive by, and you can see a mounted shell. So when this gets packed even further, there's gonna be more water running down my driveway. The other comment that I had was the existing buildings, which they're taking credit for removing from this area. Okay? Manny Farias, and one of the comments the gentleman made earlier was that the property is owned by Elaine Farias and Mr. Wright. Elaine Farias has nothing to do with this building or this property. So that information that you stated at the very beginning of it is incorrect. She doesn't own the property, she sold it. Manny told me personally that because I initially had commented to him at one point in time when he first bought the house that, hey, you removed some beautiful ornamental trees in front of your house. In Portuguese fashion with a few swears here and there, he says, it's my property, I'll do what I want with it. And I commented to him later on about all the existing barns that he was putting in to store his animals and whatnot. He says, I haven't pulled a permit on anything that's there, and I don't have to, it's my property, I'll do what I want with it, mind your own business. So Mr. Wright is taking credit for, we're gonna remove a garage to add in existing storage. Well, okay, fine, they weren't legal, he could probably take credit for the fact that he's gonna be taking down these illegal buildings. But the owner of the property told me that they weren't legal to begin with. So, and the last question I had was, when all the amendments are made to this proposal, whatever it may be, when the decisions, the amendments, all that, who's going to enforce it? Because our neighbor right now, I mean, she has a lawyer, she's got an engineer, the guy won't even respond correctly to, they were just trying to work it out. It's like, hey, your water's dumping 30 feet into my leaching field. We have pictures of ducks swimming in water that is, shin high. It's going to affect all our property. I'm concerned about the way it is now. What's going to happen when you add, over 7,200 square feet of building with a runoff from that? And the proposed, like, they're going to run another one here. How are these two impact areas going to get connected? And what, the drain pipes are going to come out this way, so they're just going to run down right down the road and infiltrate the Oliver's well? We're just very concerned about what is going on. Thank you.
I appreciate that, thank you. Yes, sir? Yes, ma'am, in the back?
Deb Maderas, 48 Old County Road. We're the south of Butters to 683 American Legion Highway and southeast to 203 Mouse Mill. I believe this is the wrong property line. We're actually right here. I spoke with Michael about that. So we abut 1, 2, 3, all 4 this way. I just wanted to give you a little bit of history on what's happened with this property. 2012, the AM engineer came in, they demolished a house, they cleared a woodland, which was from right about here down, across, it was all woods. It was a small 2-story house with a trailer that saw shopping business with a gravel driveway. So they came in, they clear cut all this, they raised this elevation. The original elevation was lost. And so they put up this 10,000 square foot building, paved the parking lot, clear cut, and so it's a totally different landscape now. So for 10 years we had no stormwater issues whatsoever, and then In 2023, fall, the rights purchased 203 Mouse Mill Road. And then in the spring of 2024, the swale that's right here, that comes over to 40 Old County, overflowed, coming through to us across all our leaching field and then across 217 Mouse Mill, which is this property here. Numerous times, I've given a thumb drive with pictures and videos to Michael Burris. We went over some of it. We sent letters to the planning board and to the building department. This is all in violation of the condition, number 1, on the site plan approval dated June 5th, 2012. The stormwater systems are just filled with stone at the background where we are, with the soil up. All those stones that were a retaining wall, I guess, are all falling down. Nothing's being maintained here at all. And I think the pictures that I sent in the videos show all that. Also, we learned that Five Star Collision, they have issues with water that is coming from here, going onto their property. I'm not sure when the date was of that, but we spoke with our neighbors, and when the water goes through, it goes down to Mouse Mill Road. It caused damage and flooding to their drainage system and all the neighbors on Mouse Mill Road. So we were told that the town informed 683 American Legion Highway that they needed to repair the swale of the overflow. So we hear that the town appointed an engineer, and they came up with the plan that this was going to be approved. So my question is, was that engineer provided this information that I gave to the planning board and to the building department in order to come up with that decision? Because I think that should all be included in this. I mean, they're damaging our property and our leaching field. All the landscaping had to be replaced. It happened numerous times. It's not just for one day. Sometimes it's for more. And there's no explanation at all. There's no concern, no transparency, no accountability. Thanks for the opportunity to voice my opinion.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Lorna Xavier, and I'm at 200 Mouse Mill Road. We're almost across the street from the proposed warehouse. As you heard, we're very passionate and we are very concerned about the overflow. I'm not convinced that the walkers are doing their due diligence in preventing that this is going to happen. It's a known problem in our neighborhood, and I think this is just going to exacerbate the problem. I'm not really convinced that they're going to do the right thing. With that being said, I do have a couple of concerns, and one was the warehouse. No sprinklers, no type of fireproof in the warehouse is what I'm told.
That's what he said.
What measures are going to take place if there's a fire? How is that going to be addressed? I'm not sure if they'd even get any type of insurance policy, if there's no type of sprinkler system to prevent that. And also, I would like to get an update at some point if there is going to be a metal roof and how that runoff on that metal roof is going to be addressed, if there's any particles that are going to come down. And if and when this is approved, I have some questions on construction. What are the hours of construction going to be? Are they going to do it on a weekend? Are they going to start before 6 a.m.? Are they going to end at a reasonable time? Just some noise concerns that I have in the neighborhood. As it is, there was a point where the dumpsters were getting picked up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was, very loud. So I'm not sure, as it was addressed before, if there's going to be a dumpster at that site. I I'm not convinced that there aren't gonna be any full-time warehouse workers there. I'm pretty sure that they probably will be, whether it's full-time or part-time. And if that's the case, again, you'll need some type of facility. I don't foresee workers walking back and forth to use facilities, probably go in the woods. But, those are my concerns and my neighbor's concerns. Again, our biggest concern is the runoff. We're not convinced that this is gonna be done properly. I'm not convinced that there's sand. There's no sand anywhere in the neighborhood, but, anyway, thank you for your time. I appreciate you listening to our concerns.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I may as well say mine.
My name is Dawn Oliver, and I live 216 Mouseville Road, 2 houses down from it's we're actually right here. So my concern obviously is a lot about this roof, this drainage that is sand, which my yard is right here, my well is right here. I have pine trees here. Those were all trees over the years that got knocked down because he had livestock and he had cows that they would raise and eat for the family. He had pigs, he had rabbits, and he had chickens, and he had assorted goats. And so a lot of that land that was just like my land was adjusted for his needs, which right to farm community, absolutely. But now my concern is the drainage. We have all lived there for many, many years. We have had drainage issues since the day we moved in. They have all been managed. The onset of this building has totally changed topography and water flow in this area. They have drainage, runoff swale into their yard. Leslie is not here this evening. Hers runs the back of their land, and we have a big pond here now that used to be, it would dry up in the spring. It never dries up anymore. We have, whatever, I'm not even going there. Anyway, there's water here, there's water on the road, there's water that runs through. He's retained legal counsel. They've retained legal counsel. We're going to retain legal counsel. Water runs down the road. The curve on this road is so sharp. In the winter, when there's water on the road, it freezes. People fly around that corner. It's just going to be a nightmare. And he has not been a good neighbor. And he quietly purchased this property to do this project. The information was provided to all of you. It's black and white. Please look it up. He has not been a good neighbor. He's not been a good neighbor with this, and we are very frightened that he's not going to be a good neighbor with us. The water flow has not been maintained, and it's only going to become worse, and our neighborhood is suffering for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name's Stacy Pereira. I'm at 26 Westport Lakes Drive. I spent my day today on Mouse Mill Road with neighbors for a development that is being proposed in my neighborhood. I'm across the street. I was just told about this plan today. My concerns are traffic. I don't know if a traffic study was involved or needs to be involved, but coming out of my street on Westport Lakes Drive, traffic on 177 between both Mouse Mills on how they split. I'm sitting on the top of my street to clear that traffic for a good 5 minutes easily. My other concern, there was dumpster comments made on our street. We have lots of trash. The dumpster, I believe, blows over. My husband's gone over to ask if the dumpsters can be like bungee cord. So there's been a lot of littering from that dumpster, I believe. There's like plastic wrap that goes on our trees that look like ghosts. We actually, it happened in October and we thought maybe somebody did plant it there. But anyways, that's one of my concerns. Another thing, obviously stormwater and all the drainage and all that, that is definitely a big concern because we have that right across the street. And for whoever mentioned who from the town will enforce the things that aren't being done now is a good question, because we have the same question across the street with what's going on. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I think the applicant has, some work to do on their existing stormwater controls that we approved 11 years ago. And it seems apparent that they have not maintained them and that they're causing a problem for their neighbors. And I, for one, would be reluctant to vote approval for this one if they're not going to comply with what we approved 11 years ago on the neighboring property, which he also owns. So I think you have some work to do in that regard. With all this testimony, we've seen pictures and videos and everything else, and being unresponsive is not a good way to become a friendly neighbor.
Mr. Chair, I haven't seen any videos or any photos of the water running south off of the property. So I'm not aware of that, and I know that it was mentioned about the mowing. So the actual maintenance of these types of systems are pretty simple. You inspect the outlets to see if they're blocked. You inspect the observation ports to see if there's silt buildup. You inspect the outlet to see if there's silt built up, and you mow the grassed area. So that's really the simplicity. If it's still functioning, then that's all really that's required. And I'll just add to the concern of the runoff. So if you see the way that this area here is graded with the swale, this is actually taking water in that could potentially run south if that berm was overflowed. So this will hold approximately 2,500 cubic feet of water before it will be discharged as sheet flow and continue on the way that it was traveling before. So I really see this as an improvement to the drainage there. It's like I said, it's attenuating approximately 5,000 cubic feet of water during a 10-year storm. And I know that, and I appreciate everyone's concern of the stormwater, but I just would like to say this complies with the stormwater requirements, and it's also been peer reviewed by a third party who agrees as well. And I'll definitely, reach out to Mr. Wright and see if we can collect those his inspection reports for 683 and follow up with this at 203 to be sure that he's doing those as well. I mean, they're really intermittent. I think they're pretty, close together in the beginning when you first build the system, and then it goes to, I think, twice a year, if that.
John?
Neighbors, about my favorite word, because you can't be a neighbor by yourself. It defines a relationship between people who, look after each other, look in on each other. Can't have a neighborhood without neighbors. And the planning board here hears an awful lot from neighbors who come to us to express their feelings about their neighborhoods, what they love about their neighborhoods, and what they feel about their neighbors or what they feel about people who might want to become their neighbors. And so we get a good sense of the importance of what it takes to be a good neighbor. And Westport is wonderful because there are so many good neighbors here in the town of Westport. People who look out for each other. And, but there are also people who aren't good neighbors. And who say things like, hey, this is my land, I'll do what I want. Who don't seem to have a regard for their neighbors. Who don't understand the relationship between one person and the person who lives next door. Now, the thing is, just as neighbors relate to people across property lines, so does water. Water doesn't seem to have any respect for property lines. It just flows, you know, like gravity, wherever it wants to go. And so I think what the chairman is saying is you need to convey to your client that there is some work to do that involves engineering, and there's some work to do that involves neighborhood. And it isn't easy work to become a good neighbor. And the planning board doesn't, you know, we deal with rules. And we don't deal with how to become a good neighbor. But we didn't invent a whole bunch of people coming here saying that we've retained an engineer, we've retained a lawyer, because we're sick and tired of water flowing across the street into our yards. We didn't invent that, you know. We didn't send out invitations saying, please show up to our planning board meeting. But as the chairman said, if the rules set down a decade ago or so aren't being followed, then, you know, why would we be inclined to just add on to that problem? Knowing, you know, as George Santayana said, people who don't know history are condemned to repeat it. And, you know, I look at the turf driveway and the crushed stone laid on top of compacted earth, and I, for the life of me, don't understand why in a heavy rainstorm, that's just not going to be an out-of-sight river channeling an awful lot of water right across Mouse Mill Road. I just don't understand why that's not going to do that. But, so I think you've got two things you've got to tackle. One is how to keep a lot of water from going across Mouse Mill Road, and how to get the situation on the other lot, the maintenance and operation, addressed that was raised at this public meeting, so that when we address the technical drainage issues of the lot that's before us, we can feel comfortable that the applicant is going to honor an agreement. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
And this long driveway, and I appreciate the neighbor, I can't remember which one, was just talking about when this was all crushed shells. I own a 700-foot shell driveway. And the older it gets, the more it runs like a river, because the crushed shells infiltrate into little pieces and fill it up just like gravel. I can't imagine the way that this goes into the road. I'm not an engineer, but just looking at the contours, it would seem to me that at the bottom of the road, you should be going up to the road, not right to the road, so that you can control the water that comes down that way, as opposed to trying to catch it up on top of the hill.
So we're not trying to catch any water coming off of this roadway here. So this roadway is, like you said, existing shells or packed gravel.
We just have had testimony that shell driveway that exists today is a problem.
This is not long going to be a shell driveway. This is going to be a reinforced turf driveway that has compost amended soil above, and then 1.5 inches stone below. And so to me, I wouldn't understand why this would be more detrimental and provide more runoff than a crushed shell or a crushed gravel driveway. When you figure just the stones.
I'm not saying it will have more. I'm saying that even if it has less, it could still have more than should be allowed. Because right now it's a problem the way it is, right? So is this going to fix it? You're going to keep all the stormwater on your property, or is it going to go on the road?
I don't think you can hold 100% of the stormwater on any property, but this as it's designed, it attenuates the rate of runoff over 20% for every storm, up to and including the 100-year storm. And it also holds back, it provides 20% of storage in the 10-year storm, which is above and beyond the town's requirements. The 11th requirement for the town's stormwater policy is just to not have more at the 10-year storm. This reduces it by 20%.
This is not going onto a neighbor's property, it's going onto a public road. And, great, you're gonna reduce it by 20%. Is that enough?
I don't know what more we can do. That's why we've been catching additional lawn area, because you can't reduce, just by catching the impervious areas, you can't reduce it by that much because they don't account for that much of the runoff. That's why there's now catching lawn areas as well.
Mr. Chairman, there's a documented flooding problem in this neighborhood now. And you haven't seen the pictures, we have seen the pictures. There's several times this winter there was a foot or more of water standing in the road. When the butter to the north of this property expanded, we issued a permit for that project, and they were supposed to do things that haven't happened yet, and that exacerbates the problem. And now it seems to me that what you're proposing here, and I'd be happy to dig into the drainage calculations, is way too modest for the potential impact. I think this idea that steeply sloping driveway going down there and this solution You know, if you just think about the nature of drainage solutions, where do you want to catch the water? You want to catch the water at the bottom of the hill before it runs into the neighbor, right? Look at your solution. You're catching the water at the top of the hill, and you're saying, well, it's enough. And you got, the solution is backwards, or it's only a partial solution. And I think you got room to do stuff. You got room to make things better. You got a big site. The fact that your client doesn't want to spend the money to do things right, I don't know if he does not, but the evidence that we received this evening, the evidence that you heard, that to date he hasn't been maintaining the facilities that he has. So, you know, I think this is an opportunity to go back and think a little bit more comprehensively about the drainage. And I, for one, am not ready to approve this, and I would take a continuance to look at this or receive additional information, but I'm definitely not going to vote for this.
The only thing I'll add is that as I look at this driveway too, and the runoff that is flowing down uninterrupted onto Mouse Mill, I see that at the house location, the elevation is 157, and down at the intersection of Mouse Mill is 143. So there's 14 feet of descent on this road. That's about the height of this ceiling, by the way. So that water is flowing down, and so if this is Mouse Mill, the driveway is coming down here at a continuous slope. Is it not feasible to create the driveway to come down and then create a swale just before it hits Mouse Mill so that it rises back, so that the driveway comes down and comes back up, and then channel that water that's coming down the driveway to another infiltration location?
Mr. Chair, I agree that it might be preferable to possibly catch water at a low point. But if you're removing, call this 100% of runoff. If you remove 20% from the top side or 20% from the bottom side, you've removed 20%. So whether the infiltration is down below or up above, it's only going to remove 20% of the volume. Once this 20% overflows, it still goes in the natural path, the flow path of the drainage. So I honestly would say I don't know how much more you could do to this drainage. It complies with all the standards. The peer reviewer has agreed, and the planner himself has indicated that he would recommend approval of it based on the peer reviewer's comments. So I came back today with double the drainage, double the volume and reduction that I was here 2 months ago, but it's still the same, not enough drainage. So I don't know how much is enough. Where this is, to me, complies and is above and beyond with what's required by the regulations.
Well, I think there's two issues. One is the design of this property and the drainage systems that you're proposing, on top of the drainage that's coming over the swale on his own property and adding to the problem downhill. And so he's not reducing it by 20%, he's probably adding to what was already there. And this is the same applicant. So I'm not ready to vote for this. Bob is not ready to vote for this. I think you have to come back to us with some idea of having perhaps a swale and some retention basins at the bottom of the hill before it goes onto Mouse Mill Road.
Respectfully, I'm not going to request a continuance. I'd like to have a vote.
Do I have a motion?
I move to disapprove the plan, the site plan approval permit as it's provided.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Please, your time. Pardon me, Mr. Chair. Is the planner going to read into the minutes the planning review? Or the planner's recommendations?
You just denied the application.
Thanks for your time.
And based on the testimony, I would have at least recommended continuance.
I wanted to address one of the things said with a picture of, he said, cut the grass. It's like, no, this is the issue.
Okay.
But he left, so.
Please give it to.
Well,
Well, wait a minute, is this being, because I have to have copies of this, so is this something I can take?
well, I've given you the copies, actually.
Okay.
When the letter got sent from Attorney
Okay,
Marsh.
well, I just didn't want to take things for, because if you give it to the planning board, it has to be kept for the record, so.
Well, I can give you the picture, I'll just take it out. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, well.
I'm just trying to follow
When
open
he
meeting.
talked about the grass being cut, and that was the only issue, this is his property, and this is ours, and that's the fence post, and this is it, and the water is coming in. This is what's not being maintained. He's talking about the grass, it's the swales,
Okay, thank
and you
you.
can see, so, I just wanted to address that to him. because- Thank you.
Okay, I'd like a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
I apologize for raising my voice, and no disrespect, you guys do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't catch the motion and who seconded.
Bob. Motion by Bob, second by me.
Also, I'd like to thank all of you and also you all have a lovely holiday. And we are a good neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, God, it's still 6:28.
It's still 6:30.
Time moves slow to you.
You're in Alice in Wonderland.
Right. Okay, Hicks Bridge Landing redesign update.
This might look familiar. This is what we were hoping to do, which was maintain this driveway here. And the Nokochoke Hall Association does not want to give the town an easement or anything. They don't want to have the town accessing across their property or
So those
residents of the town. So that
negotiations
is,
went nowhere.
they went nowhere, and that is going to remain permanently closed. So now the design has to be reworked. I'm having the consultant work on they've been working on the ramp area because that's something that they could design in the interim while the negotiations were going on for the second ramp. But I would expect that we're going to have to really rework the current entrance to make it safer for people entering and exiting, and also to
Well,
accommodate.
people used that one entrance for 100 years, right? Okay.
But the bridge has changed, so.
Don't shoot the messenger.
Well, yes, it's been used for 100 years, but this it's been, until recently, a very I don't know, mild, I mean, there's just only been few users and boats going, fishermen putting in, a few recreational boats. I have, why are we making this so accessible? Are we encouraging more boat traffic on the river?
It's pretty busy here now.
Yeah,
It is busy,
it's
right,
busy,
I know
and
that.
I think
But
the idea
is it a
behind
public
it-
safety issue that, with all these boats now, that
Right.
people are
The idea
falling
behind
off
it
the ramp?
is to be able to provide additional capacity for people to access the boat ramp. There are a number of different rowing and kayaking groups that like to go down there and park and, get onto
Does
the
this mean this is
the
gonna be
river,
paved?
and it would be paved, which is easier to manage spills. So that's the important piece here, is that you can control pollutants better with pavement than you can with gravel.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, it probably has limited capacity because just by its nature and the fact that you've only got this one ingress and egress method. So we have to be careful about how much traffic this supports.
Well, it's going to be less now that you can't access through the Equatorial Hall Association. If you
I go down there all the time because I do water quality testing there. And I've never seen it, over full.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at this and see, what a shame. It's really gonna be a different place, unfortunately.
But the original driveway was the one that still exists, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And when did the other one go in? I think they excavated it for sand for a while, didn't
No, I've not been able to work out an answer to that question. There's been some thought that it was opened up when Hicksbridge was being rebuilt,
they? Mm-hmm.
but the engineer who worked on that project said that was not the case. So I don't know where that information comes from. I don't really know when it was open. I know that at some point the town gave this piece of property to the Hall Association for $1 or something like that.
That land?
Yes. So there's layers of
Unintended
things
consequences.
that are I don't have explanation for. And this is a project that I had inherited from when I started here, so this is I'm not the driving force behind it.
I know.
Well, who is it? Well, is there a committee
The
that's
landing
proposing
commission.
this landing committee?
I think
Jeff Bull, basically.
the landing commission, I think the town administrator was interested in doing some, I don't know exactly, there was some ARPA funds that was available, and reworking boat launches was something that, was found to be eligible expense. So instead of leaving those funds on the table, the thought was to come up with plans to upgrade
Mhm.
the landing to improve its accessibility, its safety, keep the local water cleaner.
Weren't they applying for a grant? I can't remember what the name of it is.
Seaport Economic Council?
No.
No.
The Seaport Economic Council. The one that did gave us the funds for the work at the head of Westport.
There are some funds from the
From
Seaport
there.
Economic Council involved in this project. And I know Jim had applied once, the town administrator had applied once to the Seaport Economic Council, I think it was the Seaport Economic Council, to look at I guess, pulling out some of the old piers
Mhm.
that are obstructing the water flow, and that didn't receive funding.
Right, right. Not old piers, old piles of rubble that they have on the north side of the
Ah,
bridge.
Okay.
Will this be open to the public or to town residents only?
It's town residents only right now. I would anticipate that.
You need a sticker.
You need a sticker.
You need a sticker to park here.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
And
believe that the
separate from-
people of Dartmouth can
separate
use
from
it, but
the
they can't
beach
park.
sticker.
yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't realize that
Yep.
needed a sticker.
Can I make one specific comment on the design?
Oh yeah, you come to a landing commission meeting and let Jeff Vold know. But sure, I mean, this will be recorded, so I can send it to you.
I notice there are a couple of rowers of shells. Oh, God,
Van Duzen's.
Dharma?
Van Duzen's.
the Van Duzens. And I called Ted Hayes and said, you know, we have some of the most famous makers of shells in Westport now. And they go out rowing all the time. And they land right here.
Right.
And I don't know how many other people who row shells. So they don't land at the dock because it's really hard. You need very low docks
Yes. You can't get out.
to land a shell at a dock because they're so low. So they row in here in the grass and then walk up, which probably isn't good for the grass, but it's the only way that you can get out of the shell. And, I mean, you could do it on a ramp, but that's hard on the shell because of concrete on the plastic. And it also conflicts with boat traffic.
There's no reason you can't make a float that's low enough.
Yeah, but then
If you get too many
that's
people on
not
it,
so
you get
good
wet.
for Dharma and everything else. You want a higher float. So what I'm saying is that a sweep oar, you know, 2 oars, is, what do you think, Bob? 20 feet?
Yeah, their
Eight-
sweeps are 16 to 18s.
18?
18 feet wide. So if you're rowing in to land, you need about 20 feet to come in and land. And I don't know what this dimension is. But no one is going to be thinking about, oh, I need to land a boat here But-
For the,
Right.
for the Olympic style rowing.
yeah,
They're
the
going
Van
to come in
Duzens,
like that.
the Van Duzen oars are like mine, they're 12 feet long.
Yeah. So this is actually a landing spot.
That could be a tight
Yeah.
spot for them to.
So the way to answer that is this goes out a little bit further. That's the way to answer it. But I don't think anyone who's doing this design is thinking about people landing an Olympic shell.
Or put
And
it,
they're gonna be doing that.
or put it at an angle?
I think that's the first time I've heard it. I mean, I've gone to a handful of meetings.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying it, because they might
That's a good
not
point.
have showed up at a public meeting, but they're gonna row in like that.
And there are other people that row on the,
Yeah.
ocean shells on the river.
Yeah.
And
there's
they
one-
all do the same thing, they all walk and launch right off there.
Yeah.
Well, we have an ocean shell, but we made our docks only
Yeah.
that far off the water, so.
All right, so next we have to, or we need to go over revisions to the accessory dwelling unit bylaw. should be in your packets too, if that's easier to read, but. So I sent this to town council, Jim and Bob. We had talked a little bit about this yesterday. The definition, I have taken that directly from the Affordable Homes Act and replaced our existing definition. That was recommended by council. And in the definition, Robin Stein, who was our counsel for this, asked specifically if the board would like to restrict accessory dwelling units from being used as short-term rentals. Because that is something that the act allows communities to restrict.
I guess it depends what purpose we want these ADUs to serve.
Right.
We want it to be additional housing or additional sources of revenue.
Mm-hmm. And maybe it's just something to mull over before it comes back to the board.
Isn't the accessory dwelling unit like the grandmother unit? Isn't that the main purpose?
Yeah. But originally, we restricted it, you had to live in one or the other.
Yeah.
But
Originally, the idea was we let people age in place.
Right.
If you want to, if the house you're in is too big, you could build a smaller dwelling for yourself and give the house to the kids, or you could do it, or you have kids who are trying to get started, you live in the house and you give a smaller house to the kids to get them started. That was the idea.
Yeah, it's not a VRBO.
That was not the idea.
Right.
And what we have now is this. We had this in our bylaw. We adopted this, and then now the state said, no, that these are as of right, and now we have to bring our units, our language, in to be consistent with the state law.
The state law takes effect in February 2020, and it would preempt any restrictions that the town would not be able to have otherwise, but we just need to tighten up our zoning bylaw and make sure we're consistent with what the state requires.
So it took effect in 2020?
Or, excuse me, did I say 2020?
Yeah.
Yeah.
2025.
2025?
Yeah, right.
And so what does it say? That if you want to use it as a VRBO, you can?
It says that communities can restrict that, but the intent of the Affordable Homes Act is to create more housing in communities.
Yeah.
But they left the option up for communities to allow short-term rentals, should they desire that. But if the original intent of the accessory dwelling unit bylaw was to create more housing opportunities for people in Westport for a variety of different reasons, just recognizing that housing, not just in Westport, but in the South Coast more generally, has become tremendously expensive. This can have a small but meaningful dent.
Well, that's what I think we should do is as you said, the main primary intent, I believe, should be for more housing.
Yeah.
Period. And we know that there's plenty of short-term rental units or housing in the town already, so I don't know that we need to, I think we should prohibit the use of these any that are built from this point on from being short-term rental.
Yeah.
And where does that restriction live? Is that in the short-term rental bylaw, or is it in?
I have said that I think it should be in the accessory dwelling
Yeah.
unit bylaw, because we know that there needs to be a short-term rental bylaw in town. But if this fails for some reason, the state's regulations still take effect. Whereas if there's a restriction added in the accessory, or in the short-term rental bylaw, then it can, we're introducing an element that we haven't really talked about in that bylaw. Could that have a
Might
negative
kill
impact?
that bylaw.
Right.
So the question is, say I have a house, used to be a farm, and I have a small dwelling as well as a big dwelling. And I rented it out for short-term rentals, meaning 2 weeks to this couple every summer and 2 weeks to that couple every summer. I can't do that anymore?
If this were to be passed
That's what I'm saying.
with the state law, you can rent it out.
Yeah, but the accessory dwelling unit, if it passes, gives you the right to add a unit.
Right.
The added unit, you can't rent out for 2 weeks. You can still rent out whatever unit, your house or whatever, that you've always been able to rent out for 2 weeks. We're not stopping that.
Right.
We're just saying the accessory dwelling unit, which you're adding with this, you can't rent that.
Right.
This is not a money grab.
I already have one, so can I rent it out?
You
It
already-
was illegal.
It was illegal.
Well, there's plenty of them around. I mean, just go down to the point.
Yeah, of course.
So
Yeah.
I can't rent it out? It's not, I didn't get it approved as an ADU.
Oh, see what you're saying.
Well,
in February, you can just apply for a permit.
it's a good point. I mean, you know, in fairness, do we care? What I think would be a shame if we didn't say anything and then someone just said, you know, there's a big demand for short-term rentals. I'll build an accessory unit and rent it. It's just a little business I'm gonna run on the side, and I'll build a short-term rental, and particularly if you live down close to the water, and said, hey, listen, you know, pick a number, you know.
Right.
I can get $2,000 a week, and,
Right.
you know. And then you think, well, that's not what we intended.
Well, short-term rental means you're renting for 2 weeks, or
Up
are
to
we
30,
just creating a lot of rental units?
up to 30 days.
Up to 30 days is right.
But Jim, in your case, if you have a unit, an ADU now, if you're restricted, I think as John said, if you're restricted from renting that, if we put this into effect, you could still rent your house, your main primary residence, on a short-term rental basis.
Go live in your,
Live in your ADU.
go live in your barn
Yeah, with a horse.
with a horse, if they'll have you.
As long as I bet them, they'd be happy.
So,
It's a very good horse. I wouldn't,
so
I used to
think-
live next to that horse for a short time.
I think we should, in the accessory dwelling unit bylaw, say cannot be used for short-term rentals.
I'd sort of like to put it as a question mark and listen to what people say.
In a public hearing.
Yeah, but I think the way to do that, Jim, is to
Put it in.
put it in,
Mhm.
and then see what kind of,
Yeah.
that's the way to make it a question mark, is to see what
See what kind of flag.
what
we get.
reaction.
Because what I'm gonna ask after we go through this is that we forward it to the select board so we can consider it at the next meeting. So, okay, we'll add it in and then
Yep.
see how people
Good.
react.
Yeah.
So can we send it to the select board now, or do we have to?
Because if,
Well, we'll do it tonight, but there are just a couple, I didn't wanna edit the whole thing and not run it by.
yeah,
Yes.
So,
because if we don't put it in, they'll all be used for VRBOs.
this is from the statute, 1 parking space per ADU.
Excuse me, Michael, sorry, just go back, because provision 2, I read this and I questioned whether this issue of size, saying it is not larger in gross square feet than half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we've had in the past, we've had a maximum size
Mm-hmm.
of 900 square feet, period.
This is the state's definition,
the
which
state
we could
statute.
advise to use the same exact definition that they have.
Oh, okay.
So that way
That
we
makes
don't-
sense, that
yeah.
it doesn't make sense. I mean,
There-
Comes from
there-
the state, all
There,
right.
there have been many webinars of attorneys and planning people trying to decipher what exactly was intended by some of the language in here. So some of it is challenging. 1 parking space per unit. We just have to. There's a note over here. It's hard to see, but we just need to pull over the table of uses. Change accessory dwelling unit from special permit to by
Can I
right.
ask a stupid question?
Mhm.
What's the difference between the red and the blue?
The blue Robin has highlighted, and it's called out in a comment. So,
Okay.
and the red is what I have added to our current bylaw.
And okay.
So she also recommended that, I don't think we have to do it tonight, but if there are any desired changes in the purpose and intent, to decide how much of what we would like to be reflected in here when it gets proposed at town meeting, in light of where this law was coming from. So it's something to think about for a future meeting. If you have any differing language you would like to see in there, let me know. The owner definition, we had to strike that out. This was added at the 2023 town meeting, but that you can't restrict ownership per the state law. And accessory dwelling units can be attached or detached. So you can have a standalone one or a smaller one, you know, maybe it's above a garage or off to the side. We can't restrict which kind of accessory dwelling unit is constructed.
Because right now, the detached is by special permit or something.
Right.
Which we can't do anymore.
Right.
Can we have more than one accessory unit?
We'll be. You can, if you want, but. So then I have to tighten up some of this language just based on what Robin had, some of her comment, but then she had recommended, she had stated that as long as approval from the Board of Health and the Fire Department are not being applied in a way to prohibit the use, this stuff can stay in here. I don't think that they are. The accessory apartment is contained within a single-family dwelling. We had to strike that to be consistent with the law. We added that an accessory dwelling unit must conform to the height and setback requirements for the district in which it's located. We could also layer on some additional criteria like lot coverage, something to consider. Again, just making note that an accessory dwelling unit can be attached to a principal dwelling, and this relates to regulation of where the entrance is. It's really only applicable if it's a single-family home that's being attached to. The owner must occupy one of 2 units. You can't restrict occupancy, so that had to be removed.
So it doesn't have to be owner occupied?
No.
Neither.
Yeah,
Housing
neither.
unit
Neither.
And then this is what you were talking about, Jim. There shall be no more than one accessory dwelling unit on one lot. You can, and this is something, I just changed up the language here to say accessory dwelling unit instead of accessory apartment, and struck the single family dwelling piece. But you can have, the law allows you to have more than one accessory dwelling unit on a lot by special permit. But considering that the current I wanted to change as little as possible in the interest of just making sure we have an accurate bylaw in the books. So I kept it consistent with what was already in the current bylaw and restricting it to just one unit. But that is an option if the board wants to allow a second by special
This is
permit.
a zoning bylaw, right?
Mhm.
So say I have a farm, in the farm, can I have 10? Because farms don't have to comply with zoning.
I don't know the answer to that question. There's no upper.
Especially with a farm entertainment bylaw, it says that you
Oh,
can do
God.
all this.
See where this is going.
Yeah.
You're gonna run a casino, aren't you?
No.
Jim's Casino.
It's gonna be a rodeo.
Accessory apartments rented by the hour.
I guess, to answer your question, with a question, could you do that with other housing units? I mean,
On a farm.
on a farm, yeah.
So the question is, I guess, is that on the farm, you don't have to comply with strict zoning regulations, but I still think you have to comply with setbacks. But I don't know what it has to say about residences.
Because the state really wants accessory dwelling units to be treated more of, in the same vein as a single family dwelling, as opposed to an apartment complex or something like that. So, anyway.
Yeah, this bylaw is written really is single-family attached and single-family detached houses, but they really are single-family houses.
So can you do a accessory dwelling unit as a duplex?
Yes.
I mean, 2? I mean, make one building with 2?
It's a good question. I don't think you.
One of them has to be smaller than the other.
Oh, could you make it accessory to the duplex?
No. You have a house. Can you make a duplex accessory? So there's the house and 2 units connected together.
So you have a total of 3 units.
Well,
Well, the bylaw says that you could only have one accessory dwelling unit on one lot, so that would restrict.
The answer to that question is no.
Because it's the dwelling unit, yeah, the answer is, yeah. Can't restrict the number of occupants in the dwelling unit, which was previously restricted. And then the last thing, I just had to add a section here that off-street parking has to comply with section 8.3 of the zoning bylaw. Thought that needed to be added in there. And then Robin had mentioned that if the intent of this, which is to allow some section J is to allow some flexibility in dimensional requirements, so setbacks or something like that. If there's someone with a disability, you could have a setback.
Oh, a ramp,
Encroachment.
a ramp or something that encroaches on the side, yeah.
Right. And so she said you may want to reword this simply to address any requests for a reasonable accommodation. So I can work with that language and send it back to her, but.
So on the number of, you just said that we're not restricting the number of occupants?
Correct, yeah.
So what do you need, a motion to send this to the select board?
So are we restricting the number of bedrooms?
Yes, it's restricted to one bedroom.
I don't
It's
think you can-
defined, I thought, I saw that.
I don't think you can do that.
Cooking pad, is it one?
Well, you can't have 5 people in one bedroom.
I don't, well,
Oh.
you have occupancy limits by fire code.
Somewhere.
But the zoning code can't, I don't think you can restrict the number of bedrooms.
It used to say one bedroom.
There is or I read it, so maybe it was crossed out.
Yeah, that's crossed off. We can't restrict what kinds of elements are included in the dwelling unit. You know, if there are 2 bedrooms versus 1 bedroom, we can't. Or if it's a studio, we can't restrict that.
Well, the original conduct, I think, was 800 square feet, but it had 3 bedrooms.
You want a motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I do.
I move that we forward the most recent draft of the accessory dwelling unit bylaw to the select board.
Conclusion and.
Second.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then that will be on our agenda for January 17th is the next meeting? Or that this could be on January 15th? The 15th.
No, we have January 15th.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Also, I would note that accessory can also, as we know, be used as a verb. We accessorize our living room. So pretty soon we'll be saying, you can accessorize your lot.
Also, this isn't on the agenda, so I don't want to make it a discussion item, but short-term rental regulations will also be on the agenda for January 14th for the public hearing.
Okay.
Well, provided that the select board sends it back to the planning board for the next meeting.
You want a motion on the executive session minutes? That's the next thing on the agenda for October 29th. As I read the minutes, I would make one minor edit to the minutes of the executive session, which is that you mentioned the decision we make is to agree to offer the position to Ms. Patel. Could we add her first name in the minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because nowhere does it mention her full name. Otherwise, if you're ready for a motion, I would.
Well, I'd like to inquire about, do we make these public?
I think we have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would move approval of the minutes of the executive session of October 29th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Wait, we have minutes from November 19th.
No, it says they're not available.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't have that on my version.
Okay, sorry.
I just want to
I
stay here
second-
longer.
I second the motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.